The Toronto Maple Leafs are making multiple moves as we have huge Leafs updates ahead of tonight's game against the Senators. This is the biggest game in the last decade for the Leafs. We have some huge updates to go over today, as well as some interesting quotes ahead of tonight's game following what was a disastrous Game 5. Fans are on edge. So a ton to go over today, folks. Before we get to it, if you're a part of the percentage who aren't subscribed to the channel, this is the place to be for daily Leafs content. And also a reminder, we will be live following tonight's game, hopefully celebrating a clinch. We can hope and we can pray. But at the end of the day, Darius, it's going to come down to the core four tonight and some of the players. But we were talking about line changes. Nick Robertson, all his guys. We do have some moves, some line changes. It's not exactly what fans expected. And I'll start with this, and I want to dive into a quote here from Craig Berube. But I want to start with the line rushes here. You can see Leafs didn't do line rushes in the traditional sense. So I guess technically not line rushes, but for all intents and purposes. But based on groupings, it looked like this. So the same first line, Nyes, Matthews, Marner. You have Pacioretty, Tavares, Nylander, McMahon, Holmberg, Domi, Lorentz, Lawton, Yarncroke. So everything else remains the same. We'll dive into the blue line in a minute here. Stolarz, which we'll dive into in a second, seems to be, we have an update on him. Pacioretty, Darius on the second line, and McMahon, who's been awful, is on the third line now. But Holmberg has been replaced with Patches. So a bunch of moves here.
Very interesting moves. And I think that some of them do actually make sense, and I'm a fan of them. I do want to start by saying, though, the Leafs have very rarely in this series practiced in between games and at the same time have barely taken line rushes in morning skate, which I think is a little weird. And if they end up losing this game, again, I am coming into it fairly confident. They're up 3-2 in the series. But if they do end up losing this game, I feel like that's going to be a talking point after the series, whichever way it goes heading into the next one or the offseason. So I just find that very interesting, first of all. But in terms of the moves, don't mind that third line. We've seen it at times throughout the season. McMahon, I mean, in this series, for some reason, I keep saying has forgotten how to play the sport, right? I just don't know what it is. He doesn't seem very driven. He's not skating like we know he can. He's not playing physical. So he's going to stay. He's not going to go up to the second line. He's going to stay there on the third line. I think it would be dumb to take him out of the lineup at this point, but he needs to play a lot better. We need a lot more out of him at this point in terms of production. But when you look at the second line, that second line played really well when they played together this season. Like if we can remember to the early part of the season, they were, the Leafs' best line, right? We weren't even talking about the first line at some points this season because they were so good. Now, will that translate to success at this point because they haven't played together for a long time? We don't know. We're going to have to see. And making a change like this in Game 6 where you have to win is very interesting in and of itself. But I do feel very hopeful with that line because there are times I find in this series that Tavares has been very good, right? And he's been tied up a lot and targeted by the Senators physically as well. And he's being tied up, all of that in front. Pacioretty drives the net. Like we know what Nylander brings to the table with his shot and the way that he plays in the offensive zone. Pacioretty is going to drive the net. I feel like this could be a really good combination of players on this second line. It could go absolutely horribly, but I think with Pacioretty playing with some purpose now and some guys that are driving play, it could be really good for him and them vice versa. So I actually think that this is a pretty good move. I think this could work out for the Leafs because of their, play styles and the fact that since Pacioretty has come in and the way the lineup has kind of worked out the last couple of games, the third line hasn't looked as effective. So move him up, see what he can do with those two guys. And I think with this play style, it might actually work out pretty good.
Yeah, obviously, you're replacing him with Holmberg. I mean, I think Pacioretty, they have Holmberg on that line for, in theory, a little bit of physicality, but his defense and things like that. I think Pacioretty can do what Holmberg does, but provide a bit more offensive upside. 'Cause there's been times this series where Holmberg would, I'm not going to say he'd kill the offense in the second line, but he definitely wouldn't help it because they know that he's not a threat to score. And his shot's pretty bad. And obviously not to hate on him. It's just not what he does. Now, Pacioretty, I'm not saying he's a huge threat to score either, but I think look out tonight for him setting up Tavares and Nylander a lot more than Pontus Holmberg. I think it provides a huge boost to the second line. The problem is this third line now is starting to look a little bit interesting. You have McMahon, who in theory is a threat, Domi's a threat, then you have Holmberg manning the center. So I'm curious to see how it's going to manage the third line. You can see this here. My preferred option would have been McMahon, Tavares, Nylander, but this is a group Berube trusts. Pacioretty, Tavares, Nylander were the Leafs' third most commonly used unit at 5-on-5 with a +3, 11, and 8 goal differential and a -6 shot differential and a 48.5 expected goals percentage. So it does make sense and feels like years ago now that we're talking about ages ago. Pacioretty on the second line with Tavares and Nylander. This worked. It has worked. So did McMahon in the second line, but I don't think he's shown enough to warrant a promotion up to that line. And Pacioretty, he hasn't been great, but he has a role, and I think that's kind of what they want here. The fourth line remains the same. The biggest question mark for me is that third line, and then of course the blue line's the same. And shout out to David Alter for calling Dakota Mermis mermaid, which you may have seen me laughing there a couple minutes ago. I was reading that once again, but yeah, I mean the blue line's the same, but the third line is going to be the biggest question mark here. And Anthony Stolarz does get the net tonight, as we assume, and there is some question marks there as well. He hasn't looked quite as sharp in the last couple games, but a lot of moving pieces here ahead of the biggest game in, you could argue, I mean, it's not really arguing, the last 10 years for this team, given the implications if they somehow manage to lose the series.
Yeah, and if you look at the third line too, Holmberg is a natural center. He came up playing center. He played center with the Marlies, so putting him at center there could actually work out well. And I think that he's been actually very responsible in this series. I've noticed him a lot, not in terms of goal scoring or putting up points, but actually coming back in the play, back checking, making responsible plays with the puck in his own zone. So him being put back there at center might actually round out the lineup a little bit more if that second line is going. If they're not, they're gonna have to make a change pretty quickly. So because they need them to be going, they need like Tavares and Nylander to be able to score, and even Pacioretty, if he pitches in, that would be fantastic. But I think that third line is actually better suited for success at this point if McMahon can get going because of the positional awareness of Holmberg. And then you have Domi out there who could play. I think he's played center a lot for this team. If he plays wing, he plays more free flowing. And I think that's kind of his style and kind of will allow more success for him. So, or put him in a position to succeed, I should say. So I think that this could actually be a pretty good thing and a couple good moves for the Leafs. But again, it has to work out in the way that we're seeing, right? That it could work out. And if it doesn't, they have to make a change pretty quickly here, which they were last game. So we'll see how it goes, but they have to come out very strong today.
Yeah, I mean, it's the biggest game. And you see this here from, show here. It's very interesting. Game 6 from Nick Kypreos will be the most important 60 minutes of Auston Matthews' career. And, is it a bit of a hyperbole? Maybe it isn't at this point, just because of, again, if they lose this game, you're going into Game 7 and all the momentum. I mean, momentum's already on Ottawa's side, but all the momentum will be even more, especially with the pass of the core four and Mitch Marner being a pending, UFA, John Tavares pending UFA, Matthew Nyes pending RFA. This game, it's a little bit nerve-wracking. I wish we weren't here. I wish they would have just closed it out in 4 or closed it out in 5. But the reality is they need to go ahead and actually win the game. And it is going to be one of the most important games of Auston Matthews' career. And you can see here from Craig Berube just kind of circling back a little bit on his reasoning behind switching the lines. And he basically mentioned what you mentioned there, Darius. He had some strong stretches to play alongside alongside Tavares and Nylander before his injury, which is why they made the switch for Game 6. As for the rest of the lineup, Berube felt no other changes were necessary at the moment. People were pretty fired up in the responses to this part about how no other changes were necessary. They got them to this point. I have faith that they can get them beyond, this point here. And ultimately, it's on the players. And I think it's going to be, I'm happy with the, Pacioretty decision. And it's going to be a crazy next few hours waiting until this game. But at the end of the day, one of the biggest games in a very, very long time. And Craig Berube, he's right there with you. He says, business-like, we're ready to go. Business, let's go. So Darius, any final thoughts? It's calm before the storm here, and hopefully we're celebrating a clinch on the stream tonight.
Absolutely. I think that Craig Berube always has the right mindset. That's exactly the way it should be. Business. Let's get the job done. That's all we got to do tonight. Go out there, play your style and play your game, which they did in the last game. So get back to doing that. And I think that it's on the players at the end of the day too. He's outlaid everything for them. Just go out, do it. This is exactly who we are as a team. This is what we've been doing all year. Go out and do it. And if you can't, then it's on you, I think. So, and the other thing too, we've been talking about, switch Pacioretty for Nick Robertson. Maybe that would, make it somewhat of a difference, but it's not going to be the difference between winning and losing this series. It's down to the guys who are on the ice, who've been on this team all year, who've been on this team for 9 years to get the job done tonight and make the plays, right? So we're going to see if they're up for the challenge. They have to be, because things are going to change very rapidly if they end up losing this game. So we will see what happens, but I'll keep the faith. I do think they're going to win and close it out today, because we've seen them in this position before. It's gone bad, but it's also gone right. So I think that they'll close it out tonight.
Yeah, let's talk about all your predictions are for the game. Again, we'll be live following it, so make sure to stay tuned for that. Thank you guys for watching. See you later.